The rain stopped just as I stepped onto the wet grass of Fremont Park, my suit jacket clinging to my shoulders, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I was 28, standing at the edge of the most important day of my life, and my family, every single one of them, had chosen to stay home. But then I saw the crowd. Strangers from my neighborhood, faces I barely knew, holding flowers and signs, their smiles brighter than the Seattle sun breaking through the clouds. My name is Marcus Tate, and I grew up in a small, tight-knit black community in Atlanta, where family was everything until it wasn't. I'd moved to Seattle 3 years ago, chasing a tech job and a fresh start, hoping distance would dull the sting of my parents' disapproval when I came out as gay. Didn't. My mom's voice still echoed from our last call. Marcus, you're choosing sin over us. My dad didn't even bother to speak. He just hung up. My 2 sisters, who I'd once thought were my best friends, sent a single text. We can't support this. I'd invited them to my wedding anyway, hoping they'd change their minds. They didn't. But I wasn't alone. Standing across the park, adjusting his tie with that nervous grin I adored, was Ethan Caldwell, my fiancé. Ethan, with his messy brown hair and hazel eyes that crinkled when he laughed, had become my home in a city that still felt foreign. We met at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, where he spilled his latte on my laptop and spent the next hour apologizing with such earnest charm that I asked him out before he could leave. 2 years later, we were here, ready to vow forever without my family, but with a love that felt bigger than their absence. The park was alive with color. White roses draped over a wooden arch, lavender ribbons fluttering in the breeze, and a small crowd of neighbors I barely recognized. I'd only posted about the wedding on a local message board, half expecting no one to show. Ethan and I had planned a small ceremony, just 30 chairs, thinking my family would fill most of them. When they RSVP'd no, we left the chairs out anyway, a quiet hope lingering. Now, as I walked toward Ethan, I saw those chairs weren't empty. Neighbors, people I'd passed on dog walks or nodded to at the grocery store, had shown up, holding signs that read, "Love wins" and "You are enough." Ethan reached for my hand, his fingers warm against my cold ones. "You okay?" he whispered, his voice steady despite the tremble in his own eyes. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. The officiant, a kind-eyed woman named Clara, began, but my focus drifted to the crowd. There was Mrs. Nguyen, who ran the faux shop down the street, clapping softly. Next to her stood Javier, the barista who always snuck me extra espresso shots, grinning like he'd won the lottery. These people, near strangers, had filled the void my family left behind. As Clara spoke about love's resilience, I flashed back to the night Ethan proposed. We were in our tiny apartment, dishes piled in the sink, and he'd pulled out a ring made of twisted silver, saying, "Marcus, I don't have much, but I have you, and that's everything." I cried then, not just for him but for the family I knew wouldn't celebrate us. Now, standing here, I realized I'd been wrong to think I needed their approval. The love in this park was enough. But the moment wasn't perfect. As Clara paused for our vows, a car screeched to a stop at the edge of the park. My heart sank. I recognized the red sedan. It was my sister, Aisha. She stepped out, her face unreadable, and for a second, I thought she'd come to reconcile. Then I saw the sign in her hand. "Marriage is sacred." My stomach twisted. She hadn't come to celebrate. She'd come to protest. Ethan's grip tightened on my hand, grounding me. "Focus on us," he whispered. I wanted to, but Aisha's presence was a knife, cutting through the joy. The neighbors noticed her too, their cheers faltering. Mrs. Nguyen stepped forward, her small frame fierce, and planted herself between Aisha and the ceremony, arms crossed. Javier joined her, then another neighbor, then another, forming a human wall of support. Aisha hesitated, her sign lowering slightly, but she didn't leave. Clara cleared her throat, her voice firm. We're here for love, not judgment. Marcus, your vows. I took a breath, meeting Ethan's eyes, and began. Ethan, you are my courage, my laughter, my home. I promise to choose you every day, even when it's hard, because you make every moment worth it. My voice cracked, but I kept going, pouring my heart into words I'd rehearsed 100 times. Ethan's vows followed, his voice steady but thick with emotion. Marcus, you make me believe in forever. I promise to fight for us, always. The crowd erupted, their cheers drowning out Aisha's silent protest. As we exchanged rings, the sun caught the silver bands, glinting like a promise. But Aisha's presence lingered, a shadow on the day. I knew this wasn't the end of the fight. Not with my family, not with the world. But as Ethan pulled me close, his lips brushing mine, I felt a fire ignite. This was our beginning, and no one could take that away. The kiss lingered, Ethan's warmth anchoring me as the crowd's cheers swelled like a wave. But Aisha's sign still burned in my mind, its words a jagged reminder of the family I'd lost. As we turned to face the crowd, hand in hand, I saw her slip back into her car, her face a mask of conflict, and drive away. My heart ached, but the neighbors' applause pulled me back, their faces alight with a joy I hadn't expected from strangers. We moved to the reception area, a cluster of picnic tables under a canopy of string lights. The neighbors had outdone themselves. Platters of homemade food, tamales, fried chicken, vegan cupcakes, covered every table, a patchwork of their lives offered to ours. Ethan squeezed my hand, his grin wide. They did all this for us? He whispered, his voice thick with awe. I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. These people, who owed us nothing, had built a celebration out of kindness. As we mingled, I learned their stories. Mrs. Nguyen, who'd faced her own family's rejection when she left Vietnam, pressed a bowl of pho into my hands, her eyes crinkling. You love who you love, she said simply. Javier, who'd grown up in a conservative Latino household, told us how he'd come out to his parents and lost them for years. They're back now, he said. But it took time. Keep your door open. Their words felt like lifelines, stitching together the pieces of my broken expectations. But the weight of Aisha's protest clung to me. I kept picturing her face, the way her eyes had flickered with something. Regret? Anger? Couldn't tell. Ethan noticed my distraction and pulled me aside, his hands cupping my face. Marcus, today is ours. Don't let her steal it. I nodded, forcing a smile, but the hurt was a stone in my chest. I wanted to believe in the neighbor's love, in Ethan's unwavering faith, but part of me still craved my family's acceptance. The music started, a playlist of Motown and pop hits, and Ethan dragged me to the makeshift dance floor, a patch of grass under the lights. He spun me, laughing, and for a moment, I forgot everything else. The neighbors joined in, kids twirling, older couples swaying. A woman named Lena, who lived 3 doors down, grabbed my hand and taught me a clumsy 2-step, her laughter infectious. You're family now, she said, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known I needed. As the night deepened, Ethan and I slipped away to a quiet corner of the park, sharing a slice of cake under a cedar tree. What are you thinking? He asked, his thumb brushing crumbs from my cheek. I hesitated, then let it spill. I keep wondering if Aisha's right, if I'm wrong for choosing this, for choosing us. Ethan's face softened, but his voice was firm. Marcus, love isn't a choice you justify. It's a truth you live. His words hit hard, but the doubt lingered, a whisper I couldn't shake. Then came the speeches. Clara, our officiant, stood first, her voice carrying over the crowd. "I've seen a lot of weddings," she said. "But this one? This is what love looks like when it's brave." Javier went next, his voice cracking as he shared how our courage gave him hope. Each speech built a wall around my doubts, brick by brick, until Mrs. Nguyen stood, holding a small wooden sign. She'd painted "Love Wins Always" on it, the same words from the ceremony's signpost. "This is for your home," she said, handing it to us. "To remind you." Tears stung my eyes as Ethan pulled me close. The neighbor's love was real, tangible, but Aisha's absence, and my parents' silence, still cut deep. I didn't know then that the next day would bring a letter from my mom. Not an apology, but a plea to come back to God. I didn't know that Ethan and I would spend nights arguing over whether to keep fighting for my family's acceptance or to let them go. All I knew in that moment was that I had Ethan and I had this community, and maybe that was enough to build a future on. As the night wound down, a kid named Sam, maybe 10 years old, ran up with a Polaroid camera. "Smile!" he shouted, snapping a photo of Ethan and me, our arms around each other, the crowd blurry but vibrant behind us. He handed me the photo, still developing, and I saw it. A moment of joy, unmarred by the pain of rejection. I tucked it into my pocket, a talisman against the days ahead. The morning after the wedding, I woke to the smell of coffee and Ethan's quiet humming in our tiny kitchen. The Polaroid from Sam sat on the nightstand, its colors now sharp, capturing a moment I wanted to hold forever. But as I reached for it, my phone buzzed with a notification. A letter from my mom, delivered to our apartment's mailbox overnight. My stomach knotted. I knew her handwriting, the slanted cursive she used for important things. This wasn't going to be a congratulations. Ethan slid a mug into my hands, his eyes searching mine. "You don't have to read it now," he said. But I shook my head. I needed to know. The letter was short, her words sharp as glass. "Marcus, we love you, but we can't condone this. Come back to God, and we'll be here." No mention of Ethan, no acknowledgement of our marriage. Just a plea wrapped in judgment. I handed it to Ethan, my hands trembling. He read it silently, then pulled me into a hug. "They don't get to define us," he murmured. But the words didn't fill the hole my family's absence left. We spent the day unpacking gifts from the neighbors, handmade quilts, jars of homemade jam, a set of mugs painted with tiny rainbows. Each one felt like a promise, but my mom's letter cast a shadow. I kept picturing Aisha's face at the wedding, the way her sign had wavered in her hands. Had she wanted to stay, to talk? I didn't know, and the not knowing gnawed at me. That afternoon, we walked to Mrs. Nguyen's faux shop to thank her for her gift. The wooden sign now hung above our couch. She waved us in, her apron dusted with flour, and sat us down with bowls of steaming broth. "Family isn't just blood," she said, her voice firm. "It's who shows up." Her words echoed Javier's from the wedding, and I wanted to believe them, but the letter burned in my pocket like a coal. Over the next week, Ethan and I settled into married life, but the high of the wedding faded. I started noticing the small things. The way Ethan left dishes in the sink. The way he'd hum off-key to drown out my silence when I got lost in thought. One night, I snapped at him over a spilled glass of wine, my frustration spilling over. "I'm trying, Ethan, but they're my family. I can't just forget them." He looked at me, hurt flickering in his eyes. "I'm not asking you to forget them," he said. "I'm asking you to choose us." The argument hung between us, unresolved. I started spending more time at work, debugging code until midnight, avoiding the quiet of our apartment. Ethan, meanwhile, threw himself into community events, helping organize a block party with the neighbors who'd become our unexpected family. He invited me, but I begged off, claiming deadlines. The truth was, I was afraid. Afraid of leaning into this new community when my own family felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. Then came the block party. Ethan practically dragged me out, his hand firm in mine. The street was alive with music, food stalls, and kids chasing balloons. Javier was there, pouring coffee from a cart labeled, "Brewed with Pride." Lena, the neighbor who danced with me, handed us plates of grilled corn, her smile wide. "You two are the talk of the block," she said, winking. I forced a laugh, but my eyes kept scanning the crowd, half hoping, half dreading I'd see Aisha or my parents. As the sun set, Ethan pulled me to the center of the street, where a small stage had been set up. Mrs. Nguyen stepped up, holding a microphone. "This is for Marcus and Ethan," she said, her voice carrying. "You've shown us what love can do." The crowd cheered, and Ethan squeezed my hand, his eyes bright with tears. For the first time in days, I felt the weight lift just a little. These people weren't my blood, but they were here, choosing us. That night, back home, I pulled out the Polaroid again. Ethan caught me staring at it and sat beside me. "You're still thinking about them, aren't you?" he asked softly. I nodded, my throat tight. "I want them to see what we have, to understand." Ethan took my hand, his voice steady. "Maybe they will one day, but right now we have this." He gestured to the sign above the couch, to the mugs on the counter, to the life we were building. And for the first time, I let myself believe it might be enough. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of married life settled in. But my family's silence was a constant hum in the background. I'd stopped checking my phone for messages from them, but the absence still stung. Ethan, ever the optimist, filled our days with small joys. Morning runs through Fremont Park, late-night talks over takeout, but I could tell he was watching me, waiting for the moment I'd crack. One evening, while sorting through old photos for a scrapbook Ethan wanted to make, I found a picture of me and Aisha at my high school graduation. We were laughing, her arms slung around my shoulders, her eyes bright with pride. I stared at it until my vision blurred, the memory clashing with the image of her holding that sign at the wedding. I wanted to call her, to demand answers, but what would I say? "Why can't you love me as I am?" The question felt too big, too raw. Ethan found me sitting on the floor, the photo in my hand. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "I miss her," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his hand finding mine. "You can still reach out," he said. "It doesn't mean you're giving in." I shook my head, the idea terrifying. What if she rejected me again? What if they all did? The next day, I got a text from Javier. "Coffee? Got something to show you." Curious, I met him at his cart in the park. He handed me a latte and a small envelope. Inside was a card, signed by dozens of neighbors, each name paired with a message of support. "You're not alone," Javier said, his eyes steady. "We've got your back." I swallowed hard, the card heavy in my hands. These people, who barely knew me, were offering more than my family ever had. That night, I wrote Aisha a letter. I poured everything into it. My hurt, my love, my hope that she'd see me, really see me. I didn't expect a reply, but sending it felt like loosening a knot in my chest. Ethan read it over my shoulder, his hand on my back. "I'm proud of you," he said, and for once, I didn't push his words away. Days later, I got a call from an unknown number. My heart leapt. Aisha? But it was Clara, our officiant, inviting us to a community dinner at the park. "It's for you too," she said. "A proper welcome to the neighborhood." I hesitated, still raw from the letter, but Ethan's excitement was contagious. "Let's go," he said, already pulling on his jacket. The dinner was chaos in the best way. tables groaning with food, kids running wild, music blaring from a portable speaker. Mrs. Nguyen had made enough pho to feed an army, and Lena was passing out her famous peach cobbler. I spotted Sam, the kid with the Polaroid, snapping pictures of everyone, his grin infectious. For the first time in weeks, I laughed without forcing it, caught up in the warmth of these people who'd chosen us. But the night took a turn when I saw a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. Isha. She stood alone, no sign in her hands this time, her face unreadable. My heart raced as I approached, Ethan close behind. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. She looked down, her fingers twisting together. "I got your letter," she said softly. I didn't know what to say. We stood there, the noise of the dinner fading into the background. Ethan touched my arm, a silent reminder to breathe. "Why now?" I asked, my voice cracking. Aisha met my eyes, her own glistening. "I don't agree with you, Marcus, but I miss you." It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was something. A crack in the wall between us. I invited her to join us, half expecting her to say no. But she nodded, hesitant, and followed us to a table. The neighbors welcomed her without question, passing her plates of food, their kindness bridging the gap I couldn't. As we ate, Aisha stayed quiet, but I caught her watching Ethan and me, her expression softening. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a start. Aisha's visit lingered in my mind like a half-finished song, hopeful but unresolved. She hadn't reached out since the dinner, and I didn't push, afraid to shatter the fragile connection we'd made. Ethan, sensing my unease, kept me busy with plans for our first Thanksgiving as a married couple. "Let's host," he said, his eyes bright with the idea. "Invite the neighbors. Make it ours." I agreed, but the thought of an empty table where my family should be gnawed at me. We threw ourselves into preparations, buying a turkey too big for our tiny oven and borrowing chairs from Lena. The neighbors RSVP'd with enthusiasm, promising dishes and stories to share. But as the day approached, I couldn't shake the image of my parents' dining table in Atlanta, where I'd spent every Thanksgiving growing up. Would they even mention me this year? Or would I be a ghost erased from their story? The morning of Thanksgiving, Ethan woke me with a kiss and a mug of coffee. "Today's about us," he said, his voice firm. "And them." He nodded toward the window, where Mrs. Nguyen was already crossing the street with a steaming pot. I forced a smile, determined to make this work, even if my heart wasn't fully in it. By noon, our apartment was bursting. Javier brought his famous empanadas, Lena her cobbler, and Sam's family contributed a towering stack of pancakes, his mom's idea of festive. Clara led a toast to new beginnings, her words wrapping around me like a blanket. But as we sat down to eat, I noticed an empty chair at the table. Ethan had set it out, a quiet nod to my family, a space for hope. Halfway through dinner, the doorbell rang. I froze, my fork hovering over a pile of mashed potatoes. Ethan squeezed my knee under the table, his eyes steady. "Go," he whispered. I opened the door to find Aisha, holding a pie, her face a mix of nerves and determination. "I didn't want to come empty-handed," she said, her voice small. I stared, speechless, as Ethan appeared behind me, inviting her in with a warmth I couldn't muster. The neighbors welcomed her like they'd welcomed me, no questions asked. Aisha sat in the empty chair, her pie joining the spread. Conversation flowed, but I kept stealing glances at her, searching for a sign of what this meant. After dinner, as the others laughed over coffee, Aisha pulled me aside. "I've been talking to Mom and Dad," she said, her voice low. "They're not ready, but I'm trying to understand you, Marcus. It's hard." Her words were a lifeline and a weight all at once. I wanted to hug her, to yell, to cry. Instead, I nodded, my throat tight. "Thank you for coming," I said, and meant it. She stayed for another hour, laughing at Sam's terrible jokes and listening to Mrs. Nguyen's stories. When she left, she hugged me. A quick, awkward embrace, but a hug nonetheless. Felt like a promise, thin but real. That night, as Ethan and I cleaned up, he wrapped his arms around me. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft. I nodded, leaning into him. "I think I will be." The neighbors had given us a family, and Aisha had given me hope. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough for now. Winter settled over Seattle, blanketing the city in a quiet chill, but our apartment felt warm, filled with the echoes of Thanksgiving and the neighbors' gifts. Aisha's visit had cracked open a door in my heart, but I still hadn't heard from my parents. I carried her hug like a talisman, hoping it meant more than a fleeting moment. Ethan, ever patient, kept me grounded, his laughter filling the gaps my family left. One snowy morning, I found an email from Aisha. No subject line, just a single sentence. "Can we talk?" My pulse raced as I called her, my hands shaking. Her voice was hesitant but warm. "I've been reading about, your life," she said. "I don't understand it all, but I want to try." She'd been meeting with a counselor, she said, someone who helped her navigate her beliefs and her love for me. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a step, and I clung to it. We started talking weekly, small conversations at first, about her job, my coding projects, the weather. Ethan listened in, his smile growing with each call. One day, Aisha asked about him, tentative but curious. "What's Ethan like?" she said, and I told her, his bad puns, his fierce loyalty, the way he made me feel seen. She didn't say much, but she listened, and that was enough. Spring came, and with it, an invitation to a neighborhood pride event. The neighbors had planned it, with Javier leading the charge. "You two are the guests of honor," he said, grinning. I hesitated, still raw from my family's rejection, but Ethan's excitement pulled me in. The event was a riot of color. Rainbow flags, music, food stalls, and the neighbors were there, cheering as we walked hand in hand. Sam ran up, his Polaroid snapping, and handed us a photo that captured us laughing, the crowd a blur of joy behind us. Aisha showed up, unannounced, standing at the edge of the crowd. I froze, but Ethan nudged me forward. "Go," he said, his voice steady. I approached her, my heart in my throat. "I didn't expect you," I said. She smiled, small but genuine. "I wanted to see this," she said, gesturing to the celebration. "To see you." We talked for hours, not about faith or marriage, but about us, siblings, not strangers. She met Ethan properly, shaking his hand, her eyes softening as he joked about my terrible cooking. Months later, Aisha visited again, this time with a gift. A photo album filled with pictures from our childhood, and one new one, the Polaroid from the Pride event. "I'm still learning," she said, her voice thick. "But I love you, Marcus." It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was more than I dared hope for. My parents hadn't budged, but Aisha's effort was a bridge, and I'd walk it as far as it went. That night, Ethan and I hung the album on our wall, next to Mrs. Nguyen's sign. "Love wins always," it read, and I believed it now, not just for us, but for the family we were building, blood and chosen. The neighbors had filled our empty seats, and Aisha was starting to find her place. The road ahead wasn't clear, but with Ethan's hand in mine and a community at our back, I knew we'd keep walking together.